Elm. One of the earliest of ornamental elms was the ball-headed Grafenarben elm. Ulmus minor, umbraculifera, cultivated from time immemorial in Persia as a shade tree and widely planted in cities through much of Southwest and Central Asia. From the 18th century to the early 20th century, elms, whether species, hybrids or cultivars, were among the most widely planted ornamental trees in both Europe and North America. They were particularly popular as a street tree in avenue plantings in towns and cities, creating high tunneled effects. Their quick growth and variety of foliage and forms, their tolerance of air pollution and the comparatively rapid decomposition of their leaf litter in the fall were further advantages. In North America, the species most commonly planted was the American elm, Ulmus americana, which had unique properties that made it ideal for such use. Rapid growth, adaptation to a broad range of climates and soils, strong wood, resistance to wind damage, and vase-like growth habit requiring minimal pruning. In Europe, the Wych elm, Ulmus glabra, and the field elm, Ulmus minor, were the most widely planted in the countryside, the former in northern areas including Scandinavia and northern Britain, the latter further south. The hybrid between these two, Dutch elm, U. Times hollandica, occurs naturally and was also commonly planted. In much of England, it was the English elm which later came to dominate the horticultural landscape. Most commonly planted in hedgerows, it sometimes occurred in densities of over 1,000 per square kilometre. In southeastern Australia and New Zealand, large numbers of English and Dutch elms, as well as other species and cultivars, were planted as ornamentals following their introduction in the 19th century, while in northern Japan Japanese elm, Ulmus davidiana var. japonica, was widely planted as a street tree. From about 1850 to 1920. The most prized small ornamental elm in parks and gardens was the Camperdown elm. Ulmus glabra, Camperdowni, a contorted weeping cultivar of the Wych elm grafted onto a non-weeping elm trunk to give a wide, spreading and weeping fountain shape in large garden spaces. In northern Europe elms were, moreover, among the few trees tolerant of saline deposits from sea spray, which can cause salt burning and die back. This tolerance made elms reliable both as shelter bell trees exposed to sea wind, in particular along the coastlines of southern and western Britain and in the Low Countries, and as trees for coastal towns and cities. This bell epoch lasted until the First World War, when as a consequence of hostilities, notably in Germany whence at least 40 cultivars originated, and of the outbreak at about the same time of the early strain of Dutch elm disease, Ophiostoma ulmi, the elm began its slide into horticultural decline. The devastation caused by the Second World War, and the demise in 1944 of the huge Spath nursery in Berlin, only accelerated the process. The outbreak of the new, 3 times more virulent, strain of Dutch elm disease Ophiostoma novo ulmi in the late 1960s brought the tree to its nadir. Since circa 1990, the elm has enjoyed a renaissance through the successful development in North America and Europe of cultivars highly resistant to the new disease. Consequently, the total number of named cultivars, ancient and modern, now exceeds 300, although many of the older clones, possibly over 120, have been lost to cultivation. Some of the latter, however, were by today's standards inadequately described or illustrated before the pandemic, and it is possible that a number survive, or have regenerated, unrecognized. Enthusiasm for the newer clones often remains low owing to the poor performance of earlier, supposedly disease-resistant Dutch trees released in the 1960s and 1970s. In the Netherlands, sales of elm cultivars slumped from over 56,000 in 1989 to just 6,800 in 2004. Whilst in the UK, only 4 of the new American and European releases were commercially available in 2008.